Oil prices have surged to their highest level as the Iran war continues despite President Trump's claims that talks are underway. The conflict has killed thousands of people and is now severely disrupting global energy supplies. That pressure is spreading across the global economy. And for more on how the war is influencing oil markets, we're joined by Amena Bakr, the head of Middle East and OPEC Plus Insights at Kpler. Amena, 1 month in, and is Asia, dependent on the Mid-East crude, better prepared for the oil shock, or are they still as vulnerable as before?
I think the situation remains still very, very dire in the fact that we still have a big disruption happening in the Strait of Hormuz, where normally flows are around 20 million barrels a day. We've been seeing a trickle come out of the strait since the start of the conflict, and that's still the case now. And as you highlighted correctly, I mean, Asia is reliant on these flows, and there's still a lot of concerns about how this supply gap will be met through other means. And there isn't really a resolution around that long term. So the only resolution that can happen is an end to the conflict and a reopening of the strait.
But if the war drags on, does China double down on energy security, more Russian supply maybe, or more domestic production and less exposure to Middle East crude, do you think?
I would think, I mean, China is well prepared compared to other Asian countries, in the fact that it does have a bigger cushion of stocks that it could utilize. And we were wondering, like, over the past year, why is China building up so much oil stock, and not just oil stock, all kinds of commodities? And obviously, it was in preparation for a scenario that we're seeing happen today. So, of course, I see China looking for alternative sources of crude to fill in the gap, but it also has this bigger cushion that enables it to withstand for longer. At the end of the day, I mean, nothing will last forever, and we need to see an end to the conflict and a resumption, because otherwise, I mean, the entire system and the entire globe is exposed to what's happening here.
But looking at the situation currently where the end is nowhere near in sight, frankly, who actually is winning from this disruption and who are the biggest losers here?
Well, I mean, the U.S. has lifted sanctions off of a number of crudes that were sanctioned. We started off with Venezuela, the lifting of sanctions off Venezuela, and then Russia, and then Iran. So these crudes, or these governments that used to sell at a discount of $10, $12 at one time, are now selling their crude even at a premium price. So the governments of these countries, of course, have something to gain from what's happening, and the so-called temporary lifting of sanctions does act as a relief here. But overall, I wouldn't say that anyone is a really big winner in this situation, because a lot of economies are hurting, and the most exposed here are developing economies. And we've already seen measures, the governments in several states asking people to work from home, cutting down streetlights, rationing fuel. So all of these measures, I mean, over time, we just can't have them, prolonged for a very long time. So I still don't see any way out of it, that we do need to have a political and a quick political resolution to the conflict we're seeing.
As you mentioned, some governments are already taking some measures. Are we now at a stage where government should worry less about price spikes and more about physical shortages?
No, for sure. I mean, they have to worry about both, because as long as the Strait of Hormuz is restricted, the longer, I mean, the markets realize that they need to be reacting to fundamentals rather than sentiment. I would say that the U.S. So far has more or less succeeded in messaging to the market that the situation isn't as bad as it is, and there's a near end and so on. So the market might have bought that message and swayed sentiment to some degree. But the longer we are, and as you said, like there's kind of mixed messaging here. We're seeing a buildup of U.S. special units in the region, but at the same time signaling from the U.S. that there might be a peace deal. So the market will tend to just look at fundamentals, look at the shortage in supply. And we didn't even talk about the shut-ins that are happening from Middle Eastern states during this war. The attacks on Gulf states from Iran continues on energy infrastructure and other infrastructure as well. And we've had north of 9 million barrels a day of shut-ins in the Middle East. That's to add to the problem of Hormuz being restricted.
Now, petrochemical disruption and soaring plastic prices suggest that the pain is already spreading beyond crude. How pervasive will the inflation shock be for Asian-reliant economies?
Yeah, the inflation cost, of course, is expected to be really, really high. And I mean, crude oil isn't just about direct energy supplies or power generation. I mean, crude goes into all kinds of products and systems. And that's not even to mention the disruption in an element like helium, for example, with Qatar's disruption. Qatar is a major producer of helium. It produces 30% of the world's helium supplies that goes into medical equipment and so on. So we're talking about disruption in all kinds of supply chains and not just related to crude oil. So, I mean, for Asian governments, I mean, this is something that they need to look at, and how to control this inflation and source other crude or other products that would kind of shelter them until we see a resolution.
Now, finally, what is the biggest assumption about this war that has not materialized after a month, you think?
Well, I think the biggest assumption is being too optimistic and taking messages at kind of face value, because there's a lot of messaging. And what I've been, we're all been kind of exposed to is these kind of social media messages around the war from governments that maybe are just there as a calming effect to the market, but don't reflect the realities. The realities on the ground is that this war is ongoing. Realities on the ground is that Hormuz is still not open. Realities on the ground is that we have a major shutdown for Middle East producers, that it's not just gonna be a tap that you turn on and off. So I think that messaging around this war and the war that's happening on social media has been, kind of almost tricking people a little bit in believing that this is a short-term excursion, as they call it.
Many thanks for those insights. Amena Bakr, head of Middle East and OPEC Plus Insights at Kpler. Thank you.